Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. To the July the 17th HL7 FHIR Work Group meeting. You should be able to see the meeting agenda here. What I will do is I'll put this into chat. So therefore, people who are interested in perusing the meeting minutes for agenda and minutes for today, you can do so. And what I will also do is put into chat another link to the meetings of the previous meeting, which happens on a fortnight ago on the 3rd of July. Now, before we launch into the details of the meeting, do we have someone who volunteers to take minutes?
Yes, Stephen, I'll be taking minutes.
Okay, Jamie, cool, thank you. You'll be scribing, so that's all good. All right, we can get officially into business. So the first two things that I want to do is the first thing is to approve the meeting minutes of the previous meeting, and then we will approve the draft agenda for today's meeting. So I have the link in the chat for you to peruse at your own leisure about the meeting minutes for the 3rd of July meeting, but you also have it on screen here. So I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the 3rd of July.
I'm happy to motion, Stephen. Danielle.
Thank you, Danielle, for making the motion to approve the meeting minutes of the 3rd of July. Anyone who would kindly second the motion?
Brett here, I will second.
Thank you, Brett. So we have a motion on the table. We have a seconder. All right. I think Jane is coming in, so I'll let Jane settle a bit to see whether or not we get her in with the full audio. Okay, Jane has got full audio as well. All right, let's anyone I'll ask the question of anyone who wants to have any of the items modified or adjusted. Okay, hearing none, then I'll call to the questions. Anyone who wish to abstain from voting?
Yes, sorry. Yes, I will abstain.
Okay,
Doshi.
there'll be
Thanks.
one abstain.
Two for Michael Wilson as well.
Okay, Michael, there are 2 and 3
me.
from Heath.
Me too, Stephen. Rachel Evans.
Okay, Rachel. All right, thank you. So we have 4 abstains so far. Okay, 2 more, 6 abstain. All right. The number seems to have settled, so we have 6 abstain. Anyone opposed? If not, then we have 10-0-6. The chair can't vote, so that should add up the number. Okay, that takes care of the first order of business. The second order of business is you have here the draft agenda, which 11 of them. The first one has been dealt with. So anyone wants to suggest a reprioritization of the order for those who have business to talk about any of the agenda item and needs to leave early, or as a preferences in the order. So that's one. And second, anyone who wants the items to be tabled for future meetings or removed from this meeting. or anyone who has suggestions to modify the agenda items? All right, I've heard nothing so far, so we will consider the draft agenda being approved for today's discussion. All right, let's move ahead very quickly. We are 8 minutes into the meeting. Second agenda item, updates. So, Brett, I assume that you own these items. Do you have any updates for us?
I do own it, but I'm not prepared. There's a connectathon coming. It's in previous meetings minutes as well. So yeah, see if you can get a ticket. Otherwise, there is an email on that item to be able to sign up for that. We do have our ballot open for the August ballot. So if you are an HL7 Australia member, you should have got an email to that effect. And we will send out some reminders to the TDGs as well. And yes, please do sign up for that. We are using a sign up form, but it now requires you to log into Confluence to get access to that and be a Jira user. So yep, if you are having troubles with that, let me know and we'll try and get you signed up properly. But other than that, I don't have very much else.
Thank you, Brett. Just for the purpose of convenience, do you have off the top of your head the closing day for the sign up?
Yes, so the closing day will be I've forgotten what it is, but I will look it up. Sign up runs through to the 5th of August.
Okay, sign up runs through to the 5th of August, and the ballot review and comments can start to come in the next day.
Actually, we are having a week in between to get all our logistics sorted. So the ballots will be available to be seen on the 5th of August or shortly thereafter. So that will get notified as well. So the material will be available then. You of course can log issues at any time anyway, but then the voting will actually open on the 12th of August, so a week later, and run through till the 8th of September.
Thank you. All right, so we have all the dates. Jamie, you got the dates on the meeting minutes?
Yep, all good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, cool. All right, so that's it for our item number 2. All right, let's look through the agenda items for all the mid-year project check-in. So we have several of them. The first one will be from Brett.
Cool. I will share my screen.
All right, I'll stop sharing.
Let me get this running. Hopefully you can see.
Yep, I can see your screen.
Presentation, cool. So yeah, I think due to time, we'll try and run through these pretty quickly, I hope. And
yeah, if you can, if you can keep it to if you can keep it to about 8 minutes or less, that would be great.
No worries. So basically, I'm looking at the AU base FHIR implementation guide as an artifact of where we are with that. So just checking in things that have happened. So we will see. Why is it going forward? Okay, yeah. So this is a common agenda that people are sort of following. So really just looking at project status, something about our committee process and the sort of committee work and things happening around the standard, and also just plans in terms of publishing and scope and content. So since you're all in the FHIR Work Group, you're probably aware of AU base, and hopefully it makes sense, but obviously people here from outside the group, hopefully this will help. So basically we have AU base is a FHIR Work Group governed object directly. So as an overview, AU base provides a common set of usage of FHIR resources in Australia. It covers things like data types, profiles, for particular resource types, and also offers some binding to national terminologies and also localized terminology development as needed, and also a set of extensions and recommending standard extensions, but also creating new localized Australian extensions to cover off requirements. And it is the basis of building downstream implementation guides. So notably, there's all the ones you may know about, provider directory, AU Core and eRequesting are all based on AU base in some manner. So it's that it does offer a kind of starting point for IG development and implementers, and has done so for some many years. So just with our current kind of status in terms of the publications, our last balloted publication was the 4.1.0 IG, which was done way back, released February 2023. Since then, this group's been revamped in a new format as the FHIR Work Group. It was made up by a number of different groups before that. So this is sort of consolidated as the FHIR Work Group as being the responsible group. And as part of our working program, we have an active project scope statement in action, ready for the next ballot cycle. So that August ballot cycle will contain a new version of the FHIR IG under ballot, and so we invite people to participate in that ballot, and that is really very much supporting all the changes that have happened since that last release, which is now some time ago, and also supporting the publication of the AU Core specification, which is moving towards a working standard ballot this time around. So really we need a supporting AU base working standard that's going to have all the content needed. So as far as our community process, we actually reconstituted as the FHIR Work Group in July of 23. We have, in the 12 months since then, we've actually had 22 meetings, which I think is a pretty good effort over 12 months. So we've had really consistent participation. We've had our one face-to-face, and there's one upcoming again in August, so that should be exciting. We've had 4 snapshot releases along the way, and just as a bit of an issue tracking summary, you can see there have been things worked on, there are still things in progress, and we've got a bunch of deferred sort of backlog material as well that we're still working on. So just to kind of give some numbers there. And basically for Connectathon sort of activity, we really don't have a direct Connectathon presence, but we are definitely part of the AU Core and eRequesting sort of Connectathon work that's going on as an underlying specification. So just to look at our publications, you can see I've just gone from the last release for 4.10, which was our working standard release, and you can see we've produced some number of preview snapshots along the way, supporting Connectathons and other publications along the way, and we will obviously be moving to another version soon. So yeah, just looking ahead, we know we will have a 4.22 publication in August. Potentially we might go around again in February, but we need to work out if we would need a PSS to make that happen in terms of going to ballot again in February, and maybe again in August next year as well. So these would be pretty much supporting changes and work going on with the other aligned specifications, so eRequesting and AU Core as they get developed, and then further in the future we might go around again the year after, but that's unclear at this stage. So so I think we'll probably be discussing balloting next year in the after the next ballot, probably in August. So just to cover key changes that have happened through that period. So we've looked at logged issues. We've supported some changes coming through from the AU Core draft for comment ballot. We've definitely looked at, had some improvements in tooling and things that sort of related the content of the spec. Additional bindings have become available as a mechanism. Our Jira issue tracking's changed, and that's been a useful addition in terms of being able to collect issues and do things. And we are now also using an associated Australian terminology server for builds. So we have some better support for Australian terminologies as part of our builds process. So that's sort of things that have come alongside the work we do. Gender harmony extensions have been looked at and discussed in detail. We've added support for localized search parameters. Licensing as a governance piece has been added, and we've done some work on maturity model and things like that as well as part of the sort of standardized content of AU Base. Certainly from this group, we've done a lot of governance work through this period, so that's some of that's reflected in AU Base, but I think that's also contributing to the other groups in terms of things that we can add and support. So in summary, I mean, we're progressing. I think in the last period, especially with the Spark Accelerator, we've kind of had some improvements in getting things together, being able to get more things done in a shorter period of time, and that sort of has accelerated some of the AU-based content. And I just want to say thanks to everyone who's been participating in the group to get this done, and we welcome your participation in the future. And that will probably do for me.
Thank you, Brett. Anyone has any questions for Brett?
I have one question. Can you clarify the difference between trial use and working standard?
They are the same, but it's a renaming of the same concept. So trial use has kind of gone away as being the preferred term, and so yeah, where possible, we're going to refer to things as working standards until they go normative. Yep.
Okay, so trial use is very R4.
Yep. It's yeah, I think it's just a preferential name at the moment. So I think pretty much everyone's moving towards calling their standards that. Although there's plenty of people still calling trial use standards. So it may get used interchangeably, but they are the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I do have two quick questions, which also applies to AU Core. So, Brett, would the AU base going into future ballot would have new contents? And if anyone wants to propose new contents, what's the process?
Yeah, I think at the moment, I hope actually to spend some time at the face-to-face coming up, which will be a hybrid meeting hopefully as well, to discuss the future a bit in terms of like how we might progress. But certainly we have a bunch of Jira tickets logged with things that are effectively new work, and that is a way to log interest. But we might talk about how we go about that in the future. At the moment, I think there's a case to say we should be looking at servicing the downstream projects as a priority, and and that's really covering off things that are needed, that are known to be needed for progressing those things. But of course, I think having a good backlog of things that are needed for general use is important. And so I think it would be good to discuss how we might promote that, but there's always the opportunity to log Jira tickets as a way to get it in front of us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If no further questions, then we'll move to agenda item number 4, which is update on AU Core. The floor is yours, Danielle.
Thanks. I'll just start sharing my screen.
Yep, see your
Can everyone
now.
see that? All right, awesome. So I'll try and keep that a bit short. Okay, so mid-year project check-in for AU Core will have basically the same agenda. So I'll just refresh on the project description and then talk a bit about the status and where we are and how, and then really get into some of the FCP activities, both where we've been, what we're doing now, and what is coming up in regards to R1. So So the project from AU Core, and this is all lifted from our project scope statement and project description, is setting that, the foundational content we're going through with the data model and RESTful API for minimum expectations. From an AU Core perspective, that is going to look at things around, recording, updating, searching, retrieving, digital health and core digital health and administrative information in Australia. And that goes across the usual things there on our basic sort of patient details, provider details, looking at things around, diagnostic orders and reports and results, immunizations, allergies and tolerances, medications across just administration, usage, dispense, and so forth. And that's how you call the project. What we're going through right now in our scope is R1, and R1 is an initial phase, and that's tied quite heavily to the AU-CDI, R1, AU-CDI being the Australian core data for interoperability. So it doesn't encompass the full set of things that we intend AU Core to cover in total. And I've got a slide on what that R1 scope looks like just next. So there is a particular sort of scoped down part that is agreed for R1, and also it's focusing primarily at the moment on the data access portion rather than the record and update portion of the interactions. So here's our R1 scope. This has gone through some iterations and through ballot for comment into what we're about to go for ballot for working standards shortly. So we have in our capability statements and actors essentially responder requester, that's that data access portion, with only a couple of search parameters being profiled. They're mostly to indicate where we have support for change identifiers. And then in our resource profiles, that sits largely around the vitals, and it's a subset of vitals, but it's things like, your heart rate, respiration, body weight, body height, blood pressure, body temperature. It's got the sort of demographics around patient provider. So that's your practitioner. We've got a core patient, organization, location, practitioner role. And then in terms of medications, there's AU Core medication and AU Core medication request. There's procedure and condition, and what else is hidden in there? We've got, in order to support the AU-CDI biomarkers, the diagnostic result observations, including pathology, are coming in. So that's the R1 scope. A number of things that were initially possible, where we had some early draft profiles, have really been moved out so that this has been tied down to what we're going to refine and bring through into R1. Just context setting, I guess, for people. So AU Core is a Sparked project, and that's developed through the Spark participating organisations, and in particular through the AU Core Technical Design Group, which is a technical subcommittee of this body, the FHIR Work Group. I won't go into any more in detail really on Sparked. I think we've all heard enough. And where we are now, so this is pretty cool. We're just coming out of the testing phase now and into ballot. So we're, like 2-3 weeks away now of going into ballot for R1. So we've gone through the cycle, which I guess you can see on the bottom of the screen, which is the 18-month sort of approach for releasing the first release through the FHIR community process for accelerator of doing 6 months of development, going through ballot for comment, then going into sort of testing phase. And then we're reaching the end of that now and coming into the ballot period. And then into publication of R1, we're looking in January of 2025. So just want to run through a bit on FCP activities, and in particular, I'll start with the AU Core Technical Design Group. So at this stage, there's over 400 people registered and coming from more than 200 organisations. There's 6 co-chairs across that. And our membership is kind of broken down into this sort of percentage where 40% of those 400 are vendors, 27% is government, and that includes both federal, state agencies. 29% is health professionals, and that health professionals category also includes peak bodies. 3.4% come from universities. We're not sure how to categorize 1.7% of the participants. 1.5% are consumers, so consumer advocates, and then 2.5% are Spark staff, so there's 12 people associated. One of the things that's interesting is looking at what is shared. So 60% of those registered with the AU Core Technical Design Group are also registered with the Clinical Design Group, the people who are working on the AU CDI and also the Australian eRequesting data for interoperability. And 74% are shared across both the AU Core Technical Design Group and the eRequesting Technical Design Group. I will obviously quantify here that although there are 400 sort of people registered, we really only have, I think, maybe 80 members who are relatively active, some of which are quite consistently active in terms of meetings, where there's, on average, I think about 50. I'd say maybe 30 to 40 of those are regular attendees, so they come to just about every single one of those. And then we have people who are only show up for particular topics, which is great. And that's where we've got a number of people who are just focused on allergies, or also a group of people who just really are interested in things around like organization, location, practitioner role. And that sees some of our shifting sort of attendees depending on the meeting topic. We've also had one sort of sparked testing event so far. And in fact, that's not true. We've had two. I really should have updated this. We've had two sparked testing events now and two HL7 connectathons. There's still a sparked testing event in Melbourne that's going to be held, and we've got the connectathon sort of coming up. In fact, there's probably two of them. There's the one coming up in August, and then there'll be one, I think, in December. Looking at some of our other activities, we have, at the moment, we're running fortnightly Zoom calls with what amounts to sort of quarterly face-to-face meetings. We were at a certain point running things relatively weekly, and that includes doing some, I guess, informal sort of sessions. We've had some things where we call Conformance Fridays, where for about 6 weeks we all got together and talked about obligations and must support and how does all of that work. And looking forwards, I think really towards R1 and the space left is looking at, I'd say this is all approximate, approximately 12 sort of Zoom calls coming up. Obviously, we've got the ballot for working standard, and there should be around 2 face-to-face meetings before we close up R1. And then we'll start working through R2. So just sort of our publication history, that there's a number of snapshots that have been generated for the different connectathons and also the different testing events to match that. And obviously there'll be one produced for the ballot itself. And this is just really confirming for this group that we have on our March ballot for comment we went out for. We had great participation in it, and that's now completed. So all those issues have been addressed, both those kicked to AU base, thanks FHIR Work Group, and those from the AU Core have now all been completed and been applied into the AU Core continuous integration build. And we've got our ballot coming up, which is of course the same sort of time periods as base and eRequesting, with that sign up period we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, and then the ballot period. We're aiming to sort of have reconciliation wrapped up by the end of October. From our dependencies perspective, we're pretty solid and safe on those. So FHIR is the FHIR version we're depending on is published. THO being terminology is published. Extension pack that we need is published. AU CDIR1 is published. And AU base is on track to go to ballot at the same time. So there's no concerns there. Just some key links there in the slides, which are attached to the page. Yep, that's that. Any questions?
Daniel, if there's no questions from the audience, I do have one question. If you go back to your slide deck about the AU core scope.
Sure. Let me
R1 scope,
just
R1.
pop back. Can you see my screen again?
Yes, I can see your screen again. Yeah, this one.
Yep.
In this one, you have diagnostic results observations and pathology
Yes.
results observation. Does the
Yes.
diagnostic results scope include DI and pathology, or this is specifically for DI?
It's not diagnostic imaging, it's generic.
Yeah, it's generic. Okay.
Yes. It's a generic profile. And pathology is a subset of that.
Okay.
Just going to it, but yeah, we probably don't need me to go stare at it and show it on the screen for you, but yeah.
Yeah. So just a quick clarification because when people look at that, people do might have questions. So yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions from the audience? If not, I'm very mindful about the very tight timeline. Then we'll move to AU eRequesting and update from Michael Wilson.
Yep, thank you. I'll just share my window. Can you see the slides? No?
Not yet.
Okay, try again.
No.
Yeah. Might helps if I press the share button.
Yep,
Okay.
now we can see
Here
it.
we are. Yep.
Okay. So today I'm going to take you through the AU eRequesting implementation guide project and where we're at. So, if I can get my slides to work. There we go. So the agenda, same agenda as we just went through with AU Core about the project status and then the FHIR community process. So the project description for AU eRequesting FHIR implementation guide. So the purpose of the project is to develop and maintain an AU eRequesting FHIR implementation guide. And we want to monitor and align with AU Core and AU base where appropriate, and maintain a series of evolving draft IGs to support early trial use. And this will cover both the requesting and fulfillment workflows in addition to the data model. So the usage for this IG is for those building diagnostic requesting repositories, clinical systems, creating diagnostic requests, and provider systems for filling diagnostic service requests. So the context, again, the context here is that it's a part of the Sparked FHIR accelerator, and it's being run through the AU eRequesting technical design group. So I won't go through anything more there. And the scope for R1 is around service requests, and specifically for an imaging request and a pathology request. So that's the main focus we've got at the moment. As we go through ballot for comment and get feedback through that, we'll also look at probably expanding to focus around task for the workflow fulfillment process, communication requests, coverage and consent. But the main focus at the moment is very much around the service requests with imaging and pathology. The timeline of where we're at. So as in AU Core, it's an 18-month timeline we're running through for R1. and we're 6 months into that now in July. So it's been the focus is on the iterative development process, and we're getting ready for a snapshot, which will be a ballot for comment going out in August. So then we'll move through the ballot for comment resolution, as well as testing and continually to develop and expand the IG through until January, when we'll get to the point where we go to the R1 ballot and resolution with aim for publication by June next year. For the FHIR community process activities, so membership, we've got 7 co-chairs. We've got over 390 members registered, forming from 260 different organisations. And as for AU Core, we've got about 40% vendors, 25% government, 30% health professionals, 3% universities, 2% unknown again, and 1.3% consumers, with 2.9% being sparked. The crossover as well between the AU eRequesting TDG and the clinical design group is about 53%, and 74% is common with the AU Core TDG. So we're seeing a fair bit of crossover there, which is actually really good. But where we've been, what we've been doing with the FHIR community process is that the activities to date, we've had 19 Zoom calls. So we're running at the moment, we were fortnightly, we're now running weekly TDG meetings. We've had one connectathon. We have averaged about 55 attendees at each meeting, which is quite consistent, and had one face-to-face meeting. So we've got another face-to-face meeting coming up in August, as well as another connectathon in August, and then others throughout the year. We'll also look at having some testing events similar to what AU Core is just going through now, where we actually have some targeted sparked events for testing specific parts of eRequesting, and we'll likely continue the weekly Zoom calls for quite a while. And we've got the ballot for comment coming up in August, and the ballot for working standard, which will be early next year. So this is the ballot for comment that's coming up next month. So that's where sign-ups open now through until the 5th of August, and then the ballot period running from the 12th of August to the 8th of September. And then we'll go into reconciliation and take a snapshot at the end of that, at the end of November this year. And dependencies here as well is, again, similar to AU Core, with additional ones here with AU eRequesting DI R1 for comment published, and AU Base and AU Core R1, which is going to ballot at the same time, those bottom ones. Here again, some key links. So we've got the current CI build there. We don't have any published versions yet, so we'll do our first publication on the 5th of August, which will be for the ballot for comment. So that'll come up when we've done that. And the other links there are to GitHub and the TDG home and minutes and the like. So that's pretty much me. Hopefully we got some time back there. Open to any questions.
Thank you indeed. So we do get a bit of time back, so that's very good. So anyone has any questions for Michael? All right, so it's all crystal clear then. All right, then in that case, thank you, Michael, for your walkthrough. And we'll move to the next agenda item, which is number 6 on AU provider directories. I saw Jacob came in earlier this meeting. So Jacob, you are still here?
Yes, I am indeed. Sorry, I'm just trying to drive Zoom. Yes, I am. I can provide a very quick mid-year update on the provider directory. So,
okay, fire away.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'll just try and get share a screen. Screen 2 window. Sorry, I'm just trying to make my way through the presentation. Okay. The entire screen when we try that. Is that sharing?
You share the screen that got my name on it because I was the last speaker.
Okay, how is that? Is that can
Now
you see that?
yep,
Yes.
now you got it. Yep.
Okay, cool. Right. Sorry, I'm more of a Teams person now rather than a Zoom. So we'll try and get through this as quickly as we can. So AU provider directories. So we do have the project. So this will provide an update on the AU provider directory implementation guide and where we are at the moment with that, which is slightly different to the development of the other HL7 AU implementation guides. And as we go through that, you'll basically have a look on some of the variances on there. So we'll go through a bit of a project description, a scope, a status, and then there's a next steps options bit that we'll sort of try and unpack as well. So in terms of the project description, as per the project scope statement, the AU provider directory leverages the AU base and defines basically a data model and an API to record, update, search, and retrieve administrative and directory information associated with healthcare provider or organizations and practitioners in Australia. It is intended to promote interoperability and adoption through common implementation. And the current version that we have at the moment of that is version 2.01, which is from 2019. So a very old baseline, and it's a little bit of a it has been a little bit of a lost cousin amongst AU Core and eRequesting. So we are trying to get and move that implementation guide and make it more recent. The original project scope, as it pertained in when this project started in September last year, was to effectively take to ballot a PD 2.1. For standard trial use through the FHIR community process. The scope included an uplift of using AU base to the latest balloted snapshot 4.1. Although we might want to revise that now based on the Brett's presentation around 4.2 coming out soon. But more on that later. The other elements of the scope of that particular project there was some cosmetic elements around providing a transition to external templates, converting menus, and including some change log pages. There were some additional errors that we were sort of cleaning up. And we were looking at mandating at least one identifier per resource in AUPD to improve the discoverability within that IG. So so that was the original scope that we set out for the project in September 2023. So what is the status at the moment? We currently have eight open issues. 25 issues have been closed. The project, as I mentioned, originally started under the National Secure Messaging Governance Committee, which was comprised of clinical peak body representatives, jurisdictional representatives, secure messaging vendors, and clinical information system vendors. So the NSMN project, as you may have heard in other forums and in other meetings, is transitioning into a closed state, with the deliverables focusing now on the HIE roadmap, which effectively represents the next evolution of directed information sharing capabilities. So we will be looking at leveraging some of the lessons learned as part of the NSMN journey, and they'll be used to inform and support the HIE. So really a bit of an update in terms of the National Secure Messaging Network Governance Committee, and a bit of an introduction to the healthcare to the Health Information Exchange project that the agency is collaborating with the rest of the healthcare ecosystem with. So what does that mean for this particular project? So I guess there, given that the National Secure Messaging Network is being closed out, there is effectively we have two options available for the project in its current state. So the first option is closing out the remaining issues under the current project scope statement, and effectively seek to ballot at the nearest opportunity. We could then start to look at a new project scope statement to support the broader National Health Information Exchange and Consolidated National Provider Directory requirements. The drawback of that option is obviously we could take the community through a balloting process, but that would be just including NSMN requirements, which is, as I stated before, is being transitioned out. So there's obviously concerns around going through the balloting process and the effort required in that for getting a snapshot or a baseline that has limited utility. So the other option is that we could consider is effectively extending the current project scope statement to include support for capturing the HIE and the Consolidated National Provider Directory requirements, and then potentially seek to ballot in the future once these broader requirements for CNPD have been captured. So really looking at extending and revising the project scope statement, and effectively looking at bringing the group and together to effectively facilitate capturing and supporting of requirements for the CNPD. So those are the two options, and the question I've got for the group is, around what their view is around which option we should be considering for this particular project. It's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. We have two hands up. I don't know which one is first, but I'll go by alphabetical. Andy.
It's definitely Danielle first.
Oh, Danielle first. Okay. All right, Danielle, you want to take your questions first?
Yeah, I wanted to know, because in terms of like going to ballot and so forth, I know we're talking about the current version of PD, but has provider directory ever been to ballot? Like, are we, or is this still essentially release 1 from a standards perspective we're talking about?
No, we did go to ballot. So there was a version that we cut in. So there's a version 2.0 that we did in 2019, and my understanding is that went through a formal ballot process.
I don't know if it has.
Sure.
Can you confirm that, Kurt, if
sure
there's ever been a HL7 ballot?
I'm not aware of that. I may be wrong.
At the provider directory webpage, it claims that there is a 2.0.1 that was published on 15 August 2019.
Oh, no, I mean, I know there's a version published, but the question is, has it ever been to ballot?
I don't think. Sorry, can you see the published publication version history on screen? Or
I was looking at it myself. I can't now. Sorry, I can only see. I can't. I think you've stopped sharing your screen. But I am looking at it, and it says PD1 had no ballot in brackets, and then PD2, but there's no ballot version, for example, and I think we need to take an action to understand if this spec has ever been through a formal ballot.
Okay, so do you have a follow-up questions, Danielle, or?
Well, I think it might be a different topic for the FHIR Work Group to talk about in terms of governance and with the PD project on whether which version is the last balloted version versus what would be a good path forwards.
Right.
Is what I was thinking.
Yep, I'm mindful about time, so can we park your questions until we sort of consider the others questions first?
Yes, I think that's taken action to work out its ballot history.
Sounds good. So we have an action to be fulfilled, and we'll take the next question from Andy.
Jacob, could you talk about how this work is lining up with the Australian FHIR community process?
So at the moment, it's a little bit on hold because of the sunsetting of the National Secure Messaging Network. So there was a lot of work that was being done through that particular technical working group, and a lot of the requirements coming out of that technical working group were being fed into pull requests that we were submitting through that particular process. But given that has sort of transitioned or been closed out, limited work has been effectively done on that. So we are in a position to basically, as I've sort of, and I might actually just try and share that. So just so we've got the two options available. Sorry. Can you see that? Is that still coming up?
Or see your presentation?
Yeah.
I guess I'm just struggling with how this is going to follow a Australian community FHIR community process, because as I understand it, most of the work around here is not in an open sessions, an open, accessible kind of community. So kind of doesn't seem to track the foundations of the community process. So I guess I'm just curious about how you would see the process opening up to be more inclusive, rather than most of the details around the HIE and the consolidated national prior directory are all behind closed doors.
I think, yes, I think that is a very valid question. I think we are still just trying to work through those particular requirements, as well as the broader stakeholder engagement strategy. So I guess that is still to be defined. We're definitely going to be looking at something more collaborative and community-based in the very similar to what's happening with eRequesting and AU Core going forward. So we still, as those requirements and that stakeholders engagement strategy is being formulated, we should get more of a view in terms of how we how that sort of materializes going forward. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, to be determined.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So in the interest of time, I need to move the process on. Ruben, you were next.
Thanks, Stephen. I'll be quick, and thanks for the overview, Jacob. My question is, under option 1 and 2 presented, do either of those options have the option of adopting AU Core in this provided directory IG?
So I guess the original provider directory was based off AU base. I don't think AU Core has the actual the FHIR profile resources, which is, I mean, PD is all about practitioner and practitioner organization.
They are in there.
Oh, they are in there?
They're in AU Core.
Yes.
They are.
Okay. So I guess, I mean, there is definitely that particular question that we need to probably work through the FHIR community process, whether if we do go with option 2, do we, for example, say that we leverage AU Core rather than AU Base, and that will be a decision that will probably need to be worked through that community process, I would imagine.
Just in response to that one, with my FHIR Work Group hat on, not my AU Core one, there is a requirement that all HL7 implementation guides are compliant with both base and core, and you need to provide a variance statement if you are not adopting core or you're not compliant with it, and have that come back to the FHIR Work Group. So that is something that has been worked through in the FHIR Work Group, I think in about March this year, that will be expected to apply to PD, regardless of whether option 1 or 2, I think, is taken.
Right.
Okay.
So with my Queensland Health hat on, I will say supporting AU Core in PD will be highly desirable. And that's the end of my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Heath?
I'm just wondering what the timeframes would be if we're waiting for a HIE update effectively, or a HIE driven update to PD, what the timeframes are likely to be. I mean, I would like to see something go to ballot sooner than later, basically. So I think the expected timeframes of if we went for option 2 would be an important decision input.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that's a very valid comment. We are working through those timelines at the moment, and we'll probably be sharing that through the stakeholder engagement strategy and plan. So at this stage, I'm afraid I can't give you a sort of definitive timeline around what that might look like. Yeah. So.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. From the time management perspectives, we are at the top of the hour and we have only half an hour left. So given that we have a number of questions related to the options, and also which versions of the IG has been balloted, do we want to table this for the next meeting and then come back to discuss the options? Or do we want to, at the expense of other agenda items, continue with those options discussions, and then we will have to push other agenda items forward to the next meeting?
Can we vote on that? Because I'd rather push the items we need for ballot.
Sorry, Michael.
So there's some of the items down the list are required for our snapshot of AU base, and we need to vote on them.
Okay, in that case, then may I, as a chair, propose that we table the AU provider directory matters for the next fortnight meeting.
Could I make a friendly amendment?
Sure.
Which is very similar to Michael Osborne's. As our next meeting is the last one before ballot, I think we filled that up with the things to get into the snapshot to firm it up. So I'm very happy for us to postpone this decision we can come back and schedule that, maybe work with Jacob on what the right future meeting time is.
Sure. All right, so in that case, then we will postpone the discussions of the AU provider directories until at the time when we can reschedule the meeting for this discussion. All right, with that, I think thank you very much, Jacob. We will move on to the next one. Steph, you're up.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so talking about the HL7 FHIR Test Data project. Agenda's much the same. So just a quick project description and its purpose. So the HL7 FHIR Test Data repository provides open, synthetic, realistic patient data without avoids the issues with privacy and protected health information. So that patient data and associated health records that are conformant to HL7 domain FHIR IGs. The repo contains the test data source files, Postman collections, and includes utilities to generate FHIR JSON files from CSV with the mapping tool and upload the test data to a FHIR server. It's intended to support various Sparked testing activities, including testing the HL7 Sparked FHIR IGs under development and testing the Sparked reference implementations and our Inferno AU test kits. It's intended to be used at the Spark testing events and HL7 connectathons, but beyond connectathons and dedicated events, it's intended for the implementer community to support the implementer community in their adoption of FHIR standards, so they can test their client applications and servers against the reference implementations and test tools with robust test data at any time. So the scope of the test data project, currently it supports the AU core profiles. So listed here, and we're building it out so that the test data supports other HL7 FHIR IGs, including eRequesting, AU base, and AU provider directory. So project status and some of the activities, key activities. So that HL7 GitHub repository was created, Service Australia provided data. So the patient and practitioner personas and organization entities have been enriched and converted to FHIR resources. The tooling to generate FHIR resources from CSV and upload to the FHIR server have been included in the repo, and the test data generated, validated against AU core and uploaded to the Sparked development FHIR server. We're continuing to implement fixes and enhancements based on feedback, particularly the great feedback that we've received from the Sparked test events, and obviously keeping in step with the evolving IGs. So the community process activities, Service Australia have provided a significant contribution in terms of the patient, practitioner, and organization data and the associated identifiers. We encourage discussion on Zulip and for the community to raise issues and enhancements on GitHub. At the moment, there are to date, there have been 24 GitHub issues raised, 11 remain open, and they've been used. It's been used at the HL7 Connectathon back in March and 2 Spark test events to date, with more to come. A couple of challenges and things we can continue to work on include happy validation errors on multiple codings bug, which presented some challenges with uploading the test data that we wanted that was conformant to AU core to the Sparked FHIR server, which led to some gaps for our test events and a little bit of rework to come up. We need some more clinical test data. For example, a patient with a comprehensive suite of observations to support testing activities, and continuing to enrich Services Australia provided data and updates to align with the evolving IGs. This bit of a project timeline includes some of the activities, achievements to date, and we're on track to, and thanks to Heath for doing the bulk of the heavy lifting to date to get all of it ready, particularly for the test events. And we're on track to publish a test data set that fully supports AU Core and eRequesting testing in January 2025, and continually integrates the generated and validated data to align with the IGs. And one of the things that we're working on at the moment is also including a patient journey test data that reflects, or that is representative of, the patient journey from AU CDI. That's it. Were there any questions?
Thank you, Steph. Anyone has any questions?
I have a question about, I guess, the scope of the test data. If I understand right, the test data is supposed to both exercise every part of the AU Core and other profiles, and also present clinically plausible stories so that people can see what a clinically plausible story looks like going through the system. Are there any other, in a sense, items in scope for what the testing is meant to do? Because that gives two groups. One are people who want to be sure that the profiles do what we want them to do. The other is people who want to see that the clinical data they're interested in is representable in FHIR. Am I right in thinking they're the two things that the test data is meant to cover?
Yes, that's right, Richard. So I mentioned, we're still working on that patient journey test data set and taking that from the patient Maria from AU CDI. And so, yeah, the intention is to, particularly with the observations, have a patient that has a comprehensive suite of observations to support testing, which was some feedback that was raised at Monday's AU Core test event.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Otherwise, in the interest of time, we need to move on. We only have 20 minutes left. All right, in that case, then, thank you, Steph.
Thank you.
We will move on to the next one, which is the Inferno Testing Framework from Elliot. And Elliot, can I ask you to keep your presentations to 5 minutes if possible?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have to relaunch my Zoom.
Oh, he needs to be readmitted. There we are.
Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I will try to do this presentation fast. Yeah, so nice to see all of you here. So I'm going to provide an update about Inferno tests for EU Core. Yeah. So basically what we provide for persons who are interested in the development test, and if you go to the source code, you can see that actually we have under the test generator and generated, and mostly we are working on this part, on the generator that consumes a compute readable format of AU Core and automatically generate this test suits. We did it for 0.30 ballot, for 0.40 preview, and we have like continuously CI build for the current version. From the user perspective, there is a user interface where you can choose appropriate test suite, do some configuration, and run your tests. Yeah. So we started on January 2024, and the target release timeline is 2025. So we are in the middle of the way, but we already achieved pretty good results. So we started with just reusing existing generators initially created by US core team. Then we realized some discrepancy between their, I mean, US core team approach to creating implementation guide and our approach to creating a U-core. So we decided that we can't use the generator as it is. We fork it and apply our local changes. So we set up fully automated CI/CD pipeline. So we deploy all new changes of the Inferno to the Spark infrastructure. It was done in April. In May, we start more broad test. We found some missing parts like multiple end, multiple O test, some issues with data comparators, this chain search and so on. And finally, we released version 0.0.10 on the July 2024 that now we are using in testing events. And actually we are doing two things. So first of all, we validate the vendor's solution that provide FHIR API compatible with AU Core, and also we validate the Inferno test kit itself, because it's important not to just provide the test result, but also guide people to build the solution properly. Yeah, so I think right now for us it's very important to get as many feedback as possible. On the last event, I got very interesting requests, like some person come to me and said that, yeah, I see the test it passed, but why it passed? I need more logs, more details, and we're definitely struggling for this kind of feedback to understand what additional information you need to properly build your solutions. So don't hesitate to contact us in multiple ways. So you can read the source code, you can report issues on the GitHub, or contact in the FHIR chat. So that's it. I try to do it fast. Maybe you have some questions.
Thank you. You do keep to the 5 minutes time schedule that I requested. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Anyone has any questions for Ilya? All right. If not, then can I also requested that the presenters today upload their slide decks onto the meeting minutes. Otherwise, can you send it to Jimmy, and she can upload it as well. Now we have, okay, thank you. We have about 14 minutes left with 4 JIRA tickets that needs to be discussed. Are there any of those that are critical for the upcoming ballot that we need to prioritize to discuss?
The first one's good.
Okay, if that, all right, given that the first one is critical, so Michael Osborne, FHIR, take it away for you to lead the discussions on the item number 9.
Okay, just going to go back to my page. Actually, let's just share screen first. Okay. Can everyone see a page with side-by-side windows? Yep. Yeah. So this is the payconc. So coverage, the AU coverage profile has one code in there which we had to add ourselves. This is now in THO version 6.0.0, which has just been published. So what we'd like to do is some refactoring on that profile, so we can remove that code, which is it's by itself in the code system. It's also there's an extension on the value set which we have to remove, and this coverage self-pay. So there's basically this all falls out. So it's basically refactoring. It all falls out by the fact that we've now got our local code promoted to THO, which is the international source of all terminology for HL7. So just over here on the right, you'll see this coverage type and self-pay codes extended value set. And it's got this one up here, payconc, which is in terminology.hl7.org.au, which is built into this FHIR, so AU base. So this will go and it will become part of terminology.hl7.org code system coverage self-pay. So just quickly, so this is the code system that'll disappear. It's just got that one code in it. And so we're just asking the working group for approval to do this refactoring. Is that clear? Do I have any questions on that one?
It's clear to me. Heath, you have a question?
Yeah.
So the ballot, the AU base will now be based on this 6.6 version of terminology.
6.0, I think, just got released.
Right. Okay. So
I think it is.
So that'll be part of the AU base. New release will be the new dependency.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
So it doesn't look like it's been changed over yet. I think there was a couple of issues publishing version 6. I just saw them in the chat.
Yeah.
FHIR chat. But yeah, once that's totally out there, we'd like to go with this refactoring.
So yeah, I guess it's just dependent on making sure that we have that dependency.
Which we'd have to do nothing about as soon as they actually release it properly, it just automatically comes in. So we don't have to take any action. We get it for free.
As long as it is done within our timeframes, I guess that's.
Well, our time frame is actually January for publication. What we don't want to do is ballot an AU code that we then have to rip straight back out.
But we don't want to go to ballot without it either.
Actually, I think we do. If it's not in there, the best step is to take it out anyway, because we always publish against. So whatever they add, which might not be just limited to payconc, is what comes in anyway.
I'd rather get it done before ballot so we can take it to FMM1 and then ballot it. Because it's at FMM0, value-based coverage.
Okay, so
which is why we can change it without consequence.
Okay, so Michael, you want to put a motion on the table? Can you state your motion clearly?
Sorry, can you hear me? I move that we make the changes that we have requested in that JIRA ticket, and the JIRA ticket's on the agenda, the number.
Can you put it on screen again, Michael?
Yep.
Well, the JIRA ticket is FHIR 46282.
What's the impact on you, Angus and Andy?
Let's have the motion and the second first, and then we'll open up for discussion. Heath.
I move.
So, Jamie, have you captured the motion?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second, Danielle.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Okay, now we can open to further questions and discussions. Heath?
Yeah, I'm just interested in Angus and Andy's perception of the impacts on them. I just wonder whether we need some sort of deprecation process around this. I don't have a problem. Personally, I don't see an issue if we had the code in both code systems, and hence in this transition period where maybe there are production systems out there that are using the existing value set, that we may need to have a deprecation process.
It's never been balloted, so it's never actually gone through a base release yet for AU base. So that's it's not actually truly an AU base code yet. The stuff's at like draft. And
actually the value set's at FMM1.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the code system's at 1 or 0?
0. Oh, actually, the code system,
which is fine. Like it hasn't been
also at
validated
1.
yet.
It's maturity 1.
And as soon as
It's
6
got 1 code.
releases,
Yeah.
as soon as 6 releases, it's no longer valid because it's an extensible binding in the core spec, which says you have to use, if there's a code available, their code.
Yeah, but you've got to give systems some time to transition from one to the other.
Yeah, but we're at FMM1. It's not even.
It's not even valid.
Yeah, it's not.
It's
valid.
not. It's not. It's not.
That's early
being
adopters.
validated.
That's early adopter action. Yeah.
So Heath, you're worried about our production system using the code. Is that what you're worried about, Heath?
Yeah, you've got a code that is referencing this existing AU code system.
Yeah, so
and you're literally taking that away.
Yeah, but so it's configurable in my system. I can just add in the new one so that I allow the old one and the new one, and Jeannie can then at will migrate to the new one once I've done that, and will be then on the standard. Right?
So am I hearing that you have no
might be easy for you, Angus, but we don't know from the other side. But anyway,
but is there? But to Danielle's point, like who else is there, and what leg does any of them have to stand on? As I don't, in that there was no stand. You know, what standard were they? We just went alone with this code, right? And if anyone else did, so did they.
So you've implemented it. So
yeah.
I just think that we need to think about our governance and process. Do we have a deprecation process? And maybe that's a bigger story, but
we do. We deprecate when things are actual standard, like standards content gets deprecated. This is yet to be part of the standard.
Yeah, these are all just previews.
All right.
Although Richard has pointed out that 6 is actually already published.
Yeah, that was I saw Richard's
Came out overnight.
So it was overnight. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Anyone has any issues that we need to take it further for discussions?
It strikes me we've got a couple of possibilities around the terminology thing. One is we simply say that we're no longer recommending that you use this code. And then it could be subsequent to that we actually delete that value set and code system. So if somebody's, on Heath's concern strikes me wouldn't interrupt the idea of changing the specification to say use the international value. But the value set and code system could continue to exist as their old versions for whatever period, but they're historical ones. They're no longer current ones.
We have to change the AU-based coverage binding now that it's available to remove it, because it's just not consistent with FHIR values. We aren't a consistent affiliate standard by doing it. So it has to go out of AU-based coverage.
I understand from an idealistic perspective, but there's also
it's
a practical
standards perspective.
It's a standards perspective. You're in.
We can't
early
publish and go
space.
to ballot without
we're in preview space. It's not even been balloted as a draft for comment.
And
so I guess the thing about draft for comment, the appropriate process for retiring things is simply to send them away.
And I've seen a precedent for this as well. We have it somewhere. I can't point you at it, but I've seen it documented in the last few days where we actually have a deprecated code, an AU code. And I'm seeing the precedent. I don't see why we're not applying the same precedent.
That was balloted. It was balloted already. It was standards content in which we then apply the deprecation to. And in this case, if we need to, we could, I guess, keep the code system, but it can't stay on the binding for AU-based coverage.
Yeah, which and AU-based coverage is AU-based coverage is at FMM0, and I wouldn't agree to bind to a incorrect coding. Anyway, yep.
All right, I think we have sufficient discussions. In the interest of time, we're actually running to the bottom of the time that we have for this conference call. I'm going to call for the questions. Anyone who wants to abstain? I see no hands up. Anyone who oppose? If here is your chance, do you want to oppose?
No.
Okay, all right, then in that case, then motion carried. We have 19 participants, so we have 1800. All right, we practically have run out of time. There are 2 more items with 3 JIRA tickets that needs to be discussed. All right, so are there any of those 3 that are the upcoming ballot is dependent on?
Don't know. Sorry, I'm not sure on where the agenda. I've navigated away from it.
Yeah, we had the time zone extension.
There's an
question.
international time zone
Yeah.
1, and then there is the APRA extension and content, and then there is the practitioner qualification identifier. Those are the 3 JIRA tickets. Do any one of them or do all of them have implications for the upcoming ballot? If we have, then we have 2 options.
We're never gonna get through an APRA discussion.
Yeah, so
in a short time, and yeah, the time zone 1 is a previous ballot comment from international and is a good point, but is a breaking change.
But we need to get that resolved for in time for the next ballot or upcoming ballot, which opens in September?
I think we have to discuss if we will address or attempt to defer for next ballot. I think that discussion has to be had before we go to ballot.
So do we then, in that case, we have an option of set up an out of cycle meeting for next week to discuss, or is it still time for it to be discussed at the next fortnight meeting?
We can push it till next time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we can push it to the next meeting.
Yeah, if I could request people, it's basically there is a link there, and so it would be a change from using a localized extension to an international extension, which is a profile of the international extension. So if people did want to have a look, that would be really good if they got across it before we talked about it.
All right, so for the 3 JIRA tickets, one for the international time zone, the other 2 are APRA related. So we'll push it over to we'll push it out to the next fortnight meeting, and hopefully we'll get it resolved there in time for the upcoming ballot. All right, with that done, we are 1 minute over. I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move to adjourn, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. All right. Okay, meeting adjourned, and thank you, Jamie, for taking the notes. And Jamie, if you need the recording, I will send it to you once we get the notifications from Zoom.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I talk again in a fortnight.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.